Okay, all you, Durvar.
Welcome everyone to this week's Developer Podcast. And today with us we have Efrain and Robert. All right, let's kick it off with Alcatraz. So Efrain, what's been going on with Alcatraz lately? How have you been going with it?
It's going well. Still sifting through textures to start getting these details in. I mean, for the most part, all the buildings on the island are finished. Spent time this week. Had to go to work for a bit. Put some time into Alcatraz. Most of it, of course, was going through the textures on the Megascans. Trying to get something close to everything that I'm seeing on Alcatraz. Got the small buildings done, like the greenhouses, the tool sheds, the sheds for the morgue. And I'm at the point now where it's like, okay, it's time to start putting in all the smaller stuff like the railings and things like that and doing a little more dress up, which I will be doing this morning. Well, not morning anymore, it's afternoon now. But I mean, from here out, from here on, it's just finishing it up. It's getting those textures on there, getting some more set dressing in there, and still waiting on the cellhouse. Not sure if I'm going to have to do that or if Dimitri's actually been doing any work on it.
We'll go over that later in the discussion.
And yeah, I mean, right here, I mean, it's at the point where the buildings are done. I think the buildings are pushed far along enough. I've got every single structure on the island pretty much detailed out. And it's time. It's time to get this baby across the finish line, start putting in all the foliage, all the railings, everything, and get it into the game. I mean, and of course, final textures and stuff. I'm like not sure if we're going to stay with the current landscape
Dimitri's
textures.
Gonna have to come in and
from what I know,
retrofit.
yeah, we have something way different in the original project. But I mean, yeah, it's all finishing touches going forward. The rest of the buildings that I had left to do were pretty straightforward, nothing difficult. I mean, there's plenty of reference as far as, greenhouses are straightforward. That tool shed in the back, I mean, even though there's no access to that part of the island, there was enough images on Google Earth to get the idea of it. Oh yeah, that's right. I put in the guard tower. Totally forgot about talking about it. Yeah, that was it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of detail going into that as far as like the stairway and all that. I know we're not going to give players access to that tower, but I did create collisions for it. Yeah, that's another thing I did this week. Went through all the buildings I constructed, did all the collision work, so it's pretty close to the structures. Like you'll be able to go into those open areas. You'll be able to, walk over the rooftops, if that ever is a thing that we do. You'll be able to walk into that building without falling through the ground.
Like this area.
Yeah.
Where they have a little old...
I mean, pretty much the only thing I needed to add collisions to was like the interior, really, because that the outer part, like the shell, already had collisions because of the modular set. But yeah, that took maybe like a day and a half of work. Mainly because I wanted to get the collisions pretty close to the structure. So like at the officers club and the warden's house, you're actually going to be able to shoot through the windows if that's ever a thing.
We're going to have some gameplay, but it's mostly going to be for if they have base. Because the idea is that this is an RTS base that we're going to slice up and put in and just remove some of the items. So there's going to be areas that we're going to have to slightly edit and remove stuff so that they can actually build on this island in an RTS sense. And then you'll have combat on the island. So they're still going to have a stripped down version if you think of it. So what you're doing makes perfect sense because you want to put in the time to have that pinpoint accuracy for the collision to reduce the chance of units clipping, getting stuck on things. You take into consideration the ADS and some of the issues we showed last week, where it was there was a slight discrepancy in its collision that the navigation was basically making it to where they would think they could walk along this edge, but the collision wasn't large enough. So it was basically causing an issue where they would the collision would stop them, but the navigation was building. So it's absolutely critical, mission critical, that you go through and you spend that time over the last couple of days to create UCX collision. Because what he's basically having to do is he has to go and turn, like in any game engine, you have objects that you basically use base primitives that are like objects under the object that basically specify like what does the collision look like. So if I go here and I go to show simple, you're going to see that it's comprised of a bunch of different boxes and a bunch of different shapes that you do in like in a modeling software. And you make as few boxes as possible, because the more boxes and the more complex your object is, the more expensive it is to keep in memory and to calculate it when you're shooting and doing objects against it. That's why sometimes you'll notice that certain objects are broken into smaller chunks and others aren't. So that allows him to go in and take like a knife's level, a surgeon's level of precision to go in and author the collision and figure out like, okay, like he needs to add some UCX boxes here. He can auto generate for very simple boxes or things that like, you go here and you just remove collision if it auto generates and you add a box simplified if it's a box. But when you have like objects like this that are broken up and very complicated, you have to go in and manually create that collision, because the auto generated stuff of this is going to be horrible. It's going to make it to where you can't walk through these circles. It's going to make it to where you can't walk through this. So you have to go in and like, you model it, ironically, and then you model it again like a stencil tool, and you break it down into the base primitives of boxes and spheres and cylinders, and to basically make the overlapping collision mesh that you use for navigation. And then you also use it for bullets, blocking movement, and all the other fun stuff. So I was adding a little more nuance to what he's saying, where it's like, it doesn't seem like a lot, but there's a lot of process and a lot of like authoring you have to go through. Because if you just do everything automated, then you'll get it to where you can't walk under this water tower. We've played those games where someone just literally makes it to where like you can't walk past this point, is because they auto-generated or they made one cylinder for the entirety of the object instead of taking the time to make individual collision parts for everything, or just turning it on per poly collision. And it's on a per case basis. What are you going to say?
For that water tower, I kind of like the cross beams. I didn't really make collisions for that, because
we're going to have to wait to the point when we get into where we can walk on the island. Because like you figure like, take an example like this. Yeah, you basically did blow it off there. You closed. Oh, no. You did it correctly. You didn't make collision for these parts, but you made collision for the cross beams.
Yeah, those are the cross beams.
That's something that we're going to have to play test and see if it feels weird, because you figure that's one of the things that you make as a concession for optimization. And
one weird thing I noticed is like when you're playing in third person, well, maybe it's because they were all set to complex, but sometimes like collisions work differently when you're in third person than when you're doing RTS. I don't know. That's just one thing I noticed. Because I've
like, what do they do?
Like it's almost like it just assumes the collisions are there sometimes.
You have to show me a
maybe
video.
I'm just tripping.
And then basically we'd have to basically just break it down from there. But that's something we can do going into Monday, is diagnose that, because now we're getting to a point where the collision has to be pinpoint perfect. And then you have to get to the point of filling in, doing the miscellaneous stuff, adding the fences, adding the railing, putting the icing on the cake. And then at the same time, when Dimitri's able to come over and help you, because right now he's doing the weather system. We're going to talk about this. He just finished all the final turret textures. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So we'll get into that in a second. But you figure, is there anything else you guys wanted to cover for Alcatraz and move on to the next area?
I mean, from here on, it's just
adding the textures and doing the small miscellaneous.
I'm still kind of like trying to mess with like a geometry node thing for the stairs.
Well, the stairs are going to be blockouts for
modeling those out,
and that might be something that we give to Dimitri, where he just takes the base objects, exports them into Max, so he has an idea of the size, the dimensions, and then he just comes up with something unique, a unique permutation for every variation. Well, you're not going to be able to do a modular
that's what
set
I'm trying to do with Blender,
because the island is so old and so unique in terms of its deco that like every staircase is uniquely different. Like one shoe is not going to fit all, because you have some staircases that are half buried in the dirt, like over here. And then you have other ones that are like this that are kind of crazy. And then you have ones like this. So like he's going to have to go through and probably make one-offs. I'll talk to him about that going into the week. Once he gets me to find a weather system.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like with Blender, there's a way you can do they call
Mm-hmm.
geometry nodes, to create those steps. Like I could just, create different kinds of steps, do the collisions, and then just use geometry nodes to actually generate a staircase that matches each individual one
Yeah,
using
that
the
makes
different
sense.
types that you make. Still trying
It's
to figure
trial and
that
error,
out,
yeah.
though.
I
I
hear you.
mean, I don't know how easy it's going to be to get that executed. Trying to, because I've never used
Yeah, no, I
geometry
dig it.
nodes in Blender.
All right, so now we're gonna segue into what Dimitri's been working on. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into the we'll go into the top. No, that's valid. Look at this map. And we're gonna load up the attack move, and we're gonna spawn in, and I'm gonna select. Oh, I double clicked on accident. So Dimitri's been kind of working to finalize the rigging and the animations for the turrets. We fixed some of the bugs that we showed last week in relation to the turrets not being able to target and kill people that were under them. We also added it in so that the hologram no longer appears through the base mesh, which was happening previously. It looks like there's still an idea of they're not playing the welding animation just for this one thing, so we'll have to look into that. There also seems to be a longer synchronization time between that. So I'll have to look into that going into like the week. So you can see this one's textured. Something weird's going on with this one. Most likely it's a programming thing, but I will show you what it's supposed to look like. So if I go to the base asset, it would be this one. And then I go to the viewport. Oh, it's not assigned to the proper material. Yeah, it's assigned to the wool material. Okay, so then that is a... Oh, okay, I'll have to mention that to him because the texture is done. I saw it in his channel, but he forgot to map it for some reason. Maybe he didn't commit it. But regardless, you can see some of the textures on this one. And then this one's fully textured. And if I press the equal sign, they won't shoot because there's no power. So let me put some power online. The big turret's
the big
nice.
turret.
I want to see just
Exactly.
generally, I want to see it in action and see it like actually in a live session. Because I'm not really sure of this bleed out of like this little like skirt on the back. And if we want to like compact that, because some people were posting examples on the public Discord where they were saying like the turrets that like the Half-Life Gladios ones from Portal, where it's more of like an arm that's kind of like extended up. Like it's like your arm at an angle upwards and it just arcs left and right, up and down. So it's like one of those things where like we're going to experiment and try these turrets, see how the community likes it, and just kind of go from there. We could always experiment with more turret variations on walls because the new system we built allows you to kind of like plug and play different types of upgrades long term. So if I go in and I spawn someone now, they're going to shoot. And let me spawn in a metric crap ton.
Well,
the problem is that you figure that the turret is target acquisitioning a little too slow, so I see an issue there. Is that the people that he's trying to target are dying so quickly, so that way they don't actually. Oh, that was a crash. Okay, let me save that crash. Let me put that in the channel, and then I'll reopen the SDK.
You did spawn.
Well, you figure it's one of those things where those things are going to happen, and then as they run into them, we fix them in our SDK because everything's raw. So like it's not like everything's prepared and it's just a recording, which is boring. And those can be faked. We've been fucked before by games pretending that things don't exactly exist. Not mentioning any indie games. So you figure it's one of those things where I like to do everything raw, even if it's a little bit, well, shit's gonna go wrong. People can see that everything is real, everything's in the editor, and we're actively working through the matters and resolving them and showing tangible progress every week in terms of things that we might run into previously. The next week we can show an evolution or progress on whatever went wrong. So let me just tell these guys to hold fire, and then I'm going to spawn them in again. And let's see if we can simulate and show the issue that was happening previously, where they would stop. There it goes. Yeah. So the issue in the previous builds, I don't know why they're still fixed. Let me just kill these guys. Burn in hell. So the issue that we showed off in the previous build was that when they would get right on top of them like that, they would stop shooting entirely. So yeah, it looks like it's a crash is just related to something going on there. That is fixed now that you can see. Obviously, there's a crash there that we're going to have to hunt down and fix going into next week. But but there is some solid progress there. And do you want to start on the minimap, or do you want to start on the patrol and attack move, Durbar?
So let's hit it off with the patrol and the attack move. So let's get that out of the way. So you mentioned that the patrol and the attack move.
Yes.
Are
Actually, I lied.
well.
There's one more thing I have to show from last
So
week
they are-
that was a bug that I fixed going into today that I just wanted to show as a follow-up to last week. Because one of the last things that we showed before we entered the broadcast is I ended up building a generator. And for whatever reason, it wasn't rotating. And it wasn't doing what it should. Because a replication optimization. So I'm just going to show that that is actually working now, and that the power is actually replicating and changing between clients. So now if I slow-mo it to speed it up.
It's funny, slow.
Well, that's right. I can't do it on that console. I have to do it on the client, the host, because the host is the only one that can cheat technically in the game engine. But you can see also a new system in action is that over the course of last time we met, I put in a new system for dynamically detecting the bounds of an object and adding a lot more layers of precision to the system, because the previous one was not as accurate as I'd like it to be. So you'll notice that when it does unpack, it does a bounds-based dynamic check at different preset points around the bounds of the object to determine a little more accurately, based off of the precursor system that I showed last week, what zone are we in? What is the amount of percent that you're in each zone? Because again, when a building is built, it has to figure out the area of responsibility. Am I taking power away from this zone? Am I adding power to this zone? A thing like a spotlight needs to do that. And even in the case of like keeping track of enemy units, keeping track of enemy structures, every zone has a registry. So then that way we can query that registry. We can figure out where units are in that registry. We can have the AI read that. So then that way, if they lose track of you over a longer period of time, they can query that and then send people out to try and like search for you, per se. So it's kind of a way of keeping the game going if it ever stagnates in pandemic mode that we would do natively. But going into that, you're going to notice that the power actually is working. So if I go over here and I unpause the game and I set the ADS direction, once I find the console command, I'll just type it in actually. Set ADS direction. It's going to rotate. And last time when I showed you guys, it didn't rotate. Oh, I must have. God damn it. I hate when I do that. Hold on. I don't know. Oh, no, sorry. I'm like babysitting a dog, and the dog decided to basically put its nose on the keyboard and screw me. So isn't that tastic? Note to self, don't babysit a dog while you're doing a podcast. No, I'm just joking. Okay, that's fun. So essentially, it did move. You guys saw it moving. I guess I'll just do it again real fast and slow-mo so you guys can just see. But that was an issue that I solved going into this week. Early off was just working on the replication optimization and marking relevancy. So then that way the engine doesn't go above and beyond to turn things off that inherently need to always be relevant in some shape, manner, or form to players. So now if I do it, if I set this one to ADS, it's moving, it's working. If I zoom out, it keeps moving. The power is updated. And basically that way, if I go over here and I zoom back in, I can fire it on the client. I'll just type it in. Fire ADS. And it fires. This little debug box. Because right now there's no actual like little thing where that's something we're going to be working on with Dimitry is put the VFX in. So there was that, and I just wanted to show that from last week as a follow-up. Now the next thing that we worked on this week was setting up the attack move. And the attack move kind of kicked my butt because you figure it was essentially going to the formation system and adding a layer on top of it that was along the lines of like, hey, it's a hand. Think of it as like a wrapper. And then you have the base formation system that handles movement in the confines of the game. So I had to basically write like a handoff system. It's like, okay, create this formation, manage it, babysit it, then do the next one. Now, I believe this formation system is much better than the legacy version. You guys can be the judge of that and tell me your opinion now and going into the Q&A what you guys think. Now, We'll see if it's going to screw me, because sometimes I have bad luck. But the idea is that if I shift click those points I just did, they're going to wait for everyone to reach their destination, and then they move to the next point. The previous system didn't care in Legacy. The previous system, there was no real cohesion. It was like if one guy got to a point earlier than others, you're on your own, see you later. And they would basically take off and running. So the idea is that if you set queued attack move locations, they will wait for everyone to get to their location, like an A/B code of like, okay, everyone's in position, great, go. Like kind of like even like door kickers, where the idea is in that way it's easier for everyone in the group to move together. So if I just queue those 3 moves, and there's no visualizations right now, I'm literally, me and Derek are going to be working on like actually printing stuff in the world and showing your clicks. Because right now, obviously it's more developer oriented, so you can't really see like what's going on. But you can see the practicality of it in terms of like, they all move together as a unit, as a group. And then you bring that in alignment with how we've done the formation system, where it's a lot more layers of sophistication. In terms of it tries to keep them together a lot more accurately. This is a bug that happens on this level. It's because there's like a weird nav link here, so we have to investigate that. But you can see like there's a system in action for basically being able to have queued attack moves. And, oh wait, don't take my word for it. Let me spawn an infected in. So then they go back to their thing. So let me set up a one. So boom, 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 boom. And then we're going to spawn an infected. They're going to shoot them. Oh, I bet that's a new bug. Okay, I guess that's new. So let me do boom, 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 boom. Okay. So I guess that bug is back. So basically there's something going on that would happen rarely, where basically it would bypass the system that I wrote. I have to figure out why that's happening, where something gets stuck in the memory. So that's something I have to investigate. That was a bug I'm going to have to look into. But anyway, let me spawn the infected in. And you'll see that basically they'll shoot, and they'll move to the next point. They'll move to the next point, spawn another infected. They shoot, they keep going. Spawn again. Spawn again. And the idea is that it's a team effort. Everyone works together. I think this is far better than what we had in Legacy. This came in on the 11th hour last night as one of the last things that I was working on going into like the podcast. So yeah, that bug is going to happen, and I'm going to have to hunt that down and figure out what's going on. We got to add in the move visualizations, so like the points that we had in Legacy. Because like you can press like control and it just shows like their move, like where they're going to. But that's not enough. Like we need to. Now we're starting to get to a point where the foundation is there. Like we can play the game mostly, and obviously there are some bugs like I'm showing you, but we need to get it ready for the end consumer, which is y'all, which is basically like drawing the debug lines, drawing the lines of the movement, drawing the end destinations more accurately, setting the callbacks from the server to the client so other people can see it. Because it was important to me of making it to where like people had actionable intel until they knew what the fuck their teammates were doing. So one of the things that I dedicated quite a bit of time going into this week was doing the patrol system so that it natively supported replication. So if I click on little Timmy here and I press Y and I hold down Shift and the arrow changes, again, bear with me, there's no visualizations. If I click the points that I want them to move between, and again, there's no draw lines, and then I right click to confirm, then basically, I can do that, and then the other client can see the points. And then that way, when we get the drawing lines in, and Dimitri plays with the visuals for the flags a little bit, other players can see, even if they can't control the unit, they could be like, why in the fuck did you do a patrol like that? That is the stupidest patrol I've ever seen. I don't know. You guys know how you play with your friends. I don't know. My friends are dicks. We all yell at each other and complain, and Durvar tries to team kill me half the fucking time. So it's one of those things where like you figure it at least gives you that tactical control where you can see if someone's making weird patrols, making weird decisions, even if you can't directly influence that unit, and give them suggestions. Or in some cases, they can change the control mode to open. and then you could issue new patrol orders, and then they can gift you the unit, and then they can set up their own patrol, and then they can give the unit back, and then they would keep doing the order. So this is an example of basically just a replicated co-op. Now we're gonna see if it screws me. Let's see if this bug comes back. So yeah, okay, it's fixed. So it makes it to where obviously if you issue a move order like in every other legacy RTS, it would clear it for everyone. RTS, the other clients, and then that way there's no desynchronization of someone thinking that they're no longer on a patrol route. And then the other aspect is if I press Y and I click some points and both players have it selected, you don't have to select and reselect. So that took some time to basically just kind of set up the on reps and get the synergy of code working. So then that way you don't have to do anything. Because the most important thing about the RTS is not making it a gimmick, not making it poorly devised, poorly implemented, not thought of, bullshit. So one of the most important things was basically like, if we're going to do it, we need to put the time and the attention to detail in and make sure that it's not just a hindrance of like, I don't know what people are doing when they're patrolling. I don't know what they're moving when they're attack moving. Like you need this tactile feedback in everything you do. And that leads into the minimap stuff that we're going to discuss, because it's like, this is like, it's surface value you overthinking. You're like, it doesn't matter that much. It matters a lot for the co-op cohesion. So those two, basically, we knew the attack move and the patrol were going to take up quite a bit of time. So that was a good chunk of this week, is getting those two functionalities in and then testing them. So now if I press the equal sign, wrong client. I press the equal sign, he'll shoot, go back to his patrol. He'll stay in a combat mode, so you'll see that his animation is more like tense. His gun is down, and then after about 5 to 8 seconds, he relaxes and goes back into his normal patrol state, which is a slightly faster speed. There's a patrol speed, there's a combat speed, and the idea is that whenever he engages someone in that patrol state, he goes into his combat speed, he's a little more tense, his target acquisition time is up, he's a little more attentive, and then basically at that point, when after that delay of like calming down, he puts the gun back down, he goes back on his normal speed. The idea is that if you see one, you're anticipating more than one, because there's always infected or in groups. So that's something we did in Legacy. That's something that we expanded upon this time around. We made sure that it was reflected in the co-op and the synergy for programming, or like the co-op stuff. So then that way it just worked. And we're finally, it's really weird to say, but we almost have it to the point where all the native buttons are in. Like, I don't know how, it's like almost cathartic in terms of basically just, that's the right term, where it's like we finally have attack move, halt, patrol, open fire. I can press halt, it works, and it basically synchronizes, it cancels all the Q stuff. It's like these little small things that we keep adding that just keeps chipping away and bringing the game back in alignment to what we had in Legacy, but doing it bigger and better, and basically delivering on what you guys want, which is the co-op, better performance, and the cohesion of systems. Where like there's it's not weird to play the game, because I read the reviews, I see what everyone says on Steam. I maybe can't reply back to every single one, but I do my best. So we're gonna say Durvar, because I interrupted you, or you were gonna say something.
Something that I did notice when you were doing the whole group movement thing, was one guy in the group of 3 that you had for the attack move actually got stuck on that ramp and fixed himself.
Yeah,
and
that was another thing we did. We spent, oh my god.
that is an oh my time you guys have spent on the pathfinding.
Well, they didn't do that in Legacy. They didn't do it reliably. What would happen is they'd just fail. They would silently fail. And then you would have to go back and you'd find little Timmy just sitting on a corner saying like, what do I do? So one of the biggest things was having the formation system robust enough to where it had a course correction system. And it's the same thing of how we did the construction manager, that there are so many redundancies in place for building a structure now. It is like mind-blowingly like complicated in terms of like the amount of sophistication that we put into these systems. And that was really important to me this time around, which I know we'll get some flack because we're behind on schedule. We were supposed to be on stage 2 during the vehicles and the doctrines and stuff, but that was the exact same reason why. That's how we got into this problem to begin with, by basically just rushing a little bit too much, cutting a little too many corners to get a little more content in. and then it didn't really benefit us on the long term. So it was about basically taking that time that we needed to flesh these systems out, get them done correctly, act on the criticism and the feedback that we've heard over circuit years of like, we don't like this, we like that. You know, it's like the idea of the ADS rotating, where that was just someone mentioned it in the podcast, and I was like, can we do that, Dimitri? Oh, we can? I'll do it right now. It's done, it's in, it's good to go. It's better than what it was in Legacy. So yeah, it's just basically like actively just kind of being fluid. And we're going to cover that too towards the end of the podcast when we do the Q&A, is where are we in the grand scheme of getting it in your guys' hands and getting it to where you guys can actually play it in some shape, manner, or form. So we'll cover that towards the end. Is there anything else that you wanted to question or ask about for the attack or the patrol move stuff or any of the bugs that I mentioned, Durvar?
Something I do want to kind of touch base on is patrolling in groups. How would
Oh, so
they
that's funny
go
because
about
someone
doing
just asked that on YouTube and I answered it. Is basically the idea is that they all work together as one cohesive group. So the idea is that if one person in a patrol move basically like gets attacked, they're all going to respond. Now, I don't know if I should. This is one of the things that me and Michael were talking about last 2 or 3 nights ago, and we kind of put a pin in it. Because like you figure I'm conscious about going too deep down the rabbit hole in terms of implementations. But one thing that I'm talking about, and something that's on my bucket list, is I think in the future, I want to look into doing a system where patrol points dynamically register points around them, like structures, like other units, like I don't know anything. And the idea is that they would register to when those units come under attack. So the idea is that if a unit's on a patrol, and a point along their patrol in a certain radius is under attack, they would know and they would run to that position. So then that way they would, so like, you know, everyone has those patrols like a helicopter or like along a wall. And it's basically like happenstance that they're there at the right time. So that was something that I was thinking about long term that I wrote down in my notebook of something. And I'm just kind of curious what other people think. So I was going to save it for the podcast. I was going to do a Discord ping, but I was like, fuck it. I'll just mention it this week as a topic point of conversation. So if you guys like that, if you don't like that, maybe tell me on YouTube, tell me on the Discord channel. Do you guys think something like that would be something you would like? And just to visualize that, let's say, for instance, I click on little Timmy here, and I go on a patrol here, 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 and here. What that would basically do is it would scan and it would add this object. It would scan and add this object. And it would scan and add this object based off of proximity to each flag. And it would basically say if anything within those proximities come under attack, it would flag it based off of a priority system. And it'd be like, Sector 5 is under attack, Sector 6 is under attack on my patrol. You don't see, this is behind the ends kind of stuff, but it would basically say, I need to go here, I need to go here, I need to go here. And he would just take off running. So right now he's just jogging. So I'm not like curious, I'm curious. I've never seen this in an RTS game. So it's one of those things that I'm just kind of like thinking about, and I'm wondering if it's something that I should do in the future.
I know.
So,
I know. Now I know it's not an RTS game. The Eden editor on ARMA actually allows you to set up looping.
But do they dynamically know when something along the patrol route is under a damage? Like, let's say the structure gets hit by an infected, he would immediately turn around and run straight to it.
So yes, they actually do know when not structures, but units are under attack. In that game, each unit actually communicates with each other, and that's just how that game's set up. Because say, you've got a patrol of an armored vehicle patrolling around some area, and you've got infantry looped with the same patrol route. Those infantry, even if they're, say, I can't remember the name of the giant airfield on Altus.
There's so many, but I have that game burned in my memory. But I know what you mean. You can keep on.
The Altus airfield. If you have a infantry patrol way away from the armored vehicle will actually communicate with the infantry.
Well, we had a cross communication system in Legacy, and it's not in yet because we had a system where units would talk to each other. There was just no there was no actual like chatter, but the idea is that units within a fixed radius would share information, and the idea is that we were simulating they had radios, so then that way if a sniper saw someone, The person on the other side of the building would know about it within 1 second to 2 seconds. And that was meant to simulate and make the game less micromanagey, because then they knew it's in his scene list. If he comes around the corner, I'm gonna pop him. I don't have to like add him. And it took away some of the response time of like how long it would take units to like respond to units. And it was something that we did. I don't think people even realized it. And that's what made the Cirque more responsive in the last year or two. So that's something we're going to have to bake back in. Because right now, and theoretically, what we'd end up doing is adding like a squad chatter system. I think Winter has talked about this in the past, and he's wanted to do some VO for us, and we got to get some VO for that in the future. Is having it to where squads can talk to each other or have like miscellaneous chatter. They say that is a feedback loop to what's going on in combat, similar to how Fear does it. So, like I told Winter, and I'll tell everyone now, that like audio level of immersion is going to be something that's saved like for polish before we leave early access. Because right now, all of our resources, 100% of our resources goes into this rebuild and getting everything done. And you guys can see it week by week. We're 5 people doing a job of 20, realistically, because any other studio doing this kind of project would have 20 to 40 people. So like you figure we have to be very conscious in terms of the things that we add on to the docket, so we don't inflate the timeline any longer than we need to. So yeah, it seems like everyone likes it. I'm looking on YouTube. No one's talking on YouTube for some reason. But on Discord, it seems like everyone likes the concept of having patrols. It's not, I guess you could say it's not really a checkpoint system. It's more of like every flag dynamically finds objects near or along the path and would register them with it. And then that way, they would be like, wall 7 on my patrol path is under attack. I must go. And he could be about to do a loop and start coming around in like 5 seconds. Doesn't matter. Immediately turns around, runs to that wall. You know. So, okay. Seems like everyone likes that. I will put that down in my notebook of something to look into when we have a little more free time to kind of go a little bit deeper into the weeds. And then if people that weren't here recently, you just saw the new day and night system replicated with multiplayer support. So then that way everyone's in synchronization of the time of day and the sun and all that fun stuff. Because people don't come to every podcast. I like to leave some stuff idle. People don't know what's going on, so they can see that active progress at all times. So it's good to know. YouTube likes it for the people that are talking. They're just kind of shy. We're going to have to make them not shy anymore for some reason. I know you guys are watching. So, what are you going to say?
Quick, imagine.
I hate you.
Quick, imagine Robert Negative.
So, all right, anyway, so we're going to go into the mini-map. Unless you want to cover something else, Durvar.
So we've definitely got minimap on the docket for next. So
this is a foundational item. This is basically very important to me. Like you figure, the minimap is one of those things I don't want to compromise on, because the minimap is the backbone of information in any kind of RTS game. So we're taking the time to flesh it out, iron it out, and I wanted to basically come to today's podcast, show the progress, but then have a discussion. And the discussion was about ARMA, Squad, Division, other games, and how they do their tactical mini maps. What do you guys think based off of years of playing the games? I'm pretty sure a majority of the people on the Discord channel and on YouTube are people that have bought the game years ago or have had it long enough to know what's going on in the game. There's always a chance of new people, but those people are great too because they give you perspective about like what other people might not think about. So one of the things that we did was we set up the drawing. And let's see if it's going to screw me.
Now, I love the concept of drawing on the minimap because that was a big thing I used to do.
I think maybe I have to go to Derek's test map. Hold on.
I would always draw on the map. You know, this is where I'm going. This is what I've seen, where everything is. Where I know what something is located.
I'm actually missing a step. Hold on, I feel stupid right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel stupid? Maybe you are.
Wait, it was a key. Hold on. Let me ask Derek. Because he's been showing GIFs off, but I haven't tested it myself just yet. Give me one moment. I talked to him last night too, and I didn't think to ask him because he was just showing it effortlessly, but I didn't think to ask what the keybind was to do it. That is so fucking annoying. Okay, I might have to just show the video because I don't know how he was doing it in terms of like, I'll show the other aspects, and that'll give me some time to research it for a second. So one of the things that we were doing is we set up the tactical map so you can zoom in and out and basically be able to see like this. Looks like it's not, he's still working on it, but basically like it allows you to zoom in and see your units. We were taking influence from ARMA in terms of being able to have like your full tactical map, and then at the same time being able to draw on it and being able to visualize points. Now, I'm going to talk about this abstractly because obviously I'm having some technical difficulties doing it live. What I will do is a visual aid, and I will open the video of what he posted last night on Discord. So basically, you can zoom in like that, and you can draw. And the idea is it replicates to both clients. And from there, we were going to be doing it on a basis of looking at ARMA as the base minimum, where you would have a map subdivided into grids, sectors per se, for tactical reasons, and no longer do the open format that we had in Legacy. And then at the same time, have it to where you had filters and icons that you can place on the map like in ARMA. So if you were to click on a point, you'd be able to type text in, and then you'd be able to associate an icon with that text. So you can plan, you can organize, and then you would have a couple different colors. Think of it as like a Padlet of like 3 or 4 colors that you can draw with, and then you'd have layers. And you could think of layers of like tactical layers on a map that different players could draw. So Team A is planning their attack here. Team B is doing this. Team C is doing that. So the idea is that in ARMA, as far as I know, Dervar can correct me, it's just one global map, and it's just clutter. You can see everything everyone's planning, and there's no real way of taking away and adding in terms of being like, I only want to see what Team A is assigned to do. I only want to see what Team B is assigned to do. Because the biggest thing we're building to for, you're going to say?
So there are different sort of drawing.
But you don't have layers.
There
there is. Okay,
there
maybe
exists.
I missed that.
So you've got your team, your squad. Then you've got the command who, if the command presses control and then clicks, they draw like a very thin, not thin, but very translucent line that if you filter it correctly, so if you click on, I can't remember what it is. I got to play ARMA 3 again. It actually highlights what.
Oh yeah, we're not doing it like that. We were planning on doing it where you could have like layers, like a drop down, and you can just be able to create new layers like a class almost. And the idea would be is that if you go to the full screen map here, it would be zoomed out more. And you'd have like a black box with like a border around it. And the idea would be is that you can click over here and it'd be like layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and you can name them. And the idea is those layers are permanent. You can have some stuff that's static, and then you would have like the permanent layers that you can draw on, and the permanent layers are meant to be like tactical plans that different players are executing. And that was the basis, that was the idea that we were going in for having like that level of planning and sophistication. And then obviously you have the filters here, which allow you to just turn off seeing other units. You can see players if you don't want to see other players moving around, because this would technically, if you had like 4 players or like a bunch of operators in the session, you could turn that off. If you don't want to see the socks, you can turn that off. If you don't want to see structures, you can turn that on and off. Looks like that's not properly registering, so we'll look into that. And if you don't want to see the units, you can do that. Again, the mini map was something we're actively working on, so there's going to be bugs like the other stuff I showed you. And then you have the zooming, which allows you to use the middle mouse button and zoom in, and then be able to track stuff, and then turn on filters, and then you're good to go. And then you can reset it. And then the green check mark is basically if once it's set up, the green check mark is where your camera would teleport. Basically, is the idea there. What's the key to draw on ARMA? I'm having a brain fart.
I think you double click.
Yeah, I don't know what key he binded it to. He must have binded it to a key and he didn't document it, because I don't know what key it is. I'm going to put that in his channel. Let me bring up the other visual aids that he has then, and we're just going to compromise for basically the other stuff. So let me see. Here's the other one. So one of the other things was just setting it up so then that way you have the minimap ping response, which is basically just an animated sprite. Think of it as like the old flipboards that you'd have for cartoons back in the day, where it just alternates through a bunch of different animated textures. So we got that set up for damage response. We also got the where is it? We did some stress testing, which I'm going to show. The stress testing was on the confines of how many units could we draw at the same time on the minimap without running into performance issues. We tested up to. Why is it doing that?
Really,
Yeah, because Khaleesi says she runs this camp.
Really?
Jesus.
No!
Okay, I'm gonna save that as
Oh,
a.
she damn near knocked the fucking tower.
Yeah, she is crazy.
Down.
Okay, so this is basically a stress test, just to demonstrate 120 frames per second, 6,000 icons on a mini map. So we ended up investing in writing our own tech to basically be able to render at the lowest level in terms of being able to update and dynamically pull these objects. At 6,000 potential, we'd never have 6,000 actors in the world, but to give you an example, we talked about this previously a couple weeks ago, is that the old minimap system in Legacy was made off of widgets and adding 2D objects, and it was garbage. Like the widget system in Unreal natively is very expensive, and it does not scale well. Even with invalidation and a bunch of other stuff, it falls apart at the seams. It's only made for like a first-person, third-person shooter. So at that point, you have to go into the low-level code and do something custom, which is what we ended up doing this time around, and making it to where it went from, because the old mini-map probably ate up about 5 to 10 frames, just on its by itself. Just updating it, maintaining it, just was probably less than 0.1 frames, 0.2 frames. I mean, that's 6,000 units, and you're sitting at 120 frames per second raw in the editor. So it was just one of those things. Oh, sorry, that's 4,040. I lied, but that's still astronomically high. We would never need that many icons, and that's like drawing the sock icons, drawing unit icons, anything that's drawn on the map is basically doing it in that buffer. Then the other thing that we did, let me show you. All right. Minor, but it's basically just showing that essentially this was before the attack ping was put in, but it was just meant to demonstrate we were just testing and setting it up so when a unit dies, it actually properly deregisters them from the minimap system. One of the other things was the pinging system for allies. So we put that in. That might work. Hold on. So that's Control, Alt, left click. Do I have to be in a multiplayer session? And that's where I'm screwing up. Yeah, okay. So it's tied to multiplayer, which is, I guess technically pinging should be tied to multiplayer, but if you have allies, it shouldn't be that. Because like you figure the goal was having that pinging system also double for the factions in the future. So you can give them initiatives or goals. They can come to the heroes where you say attack here or do this, and they'll somewhat try and emulate that. So I'm going to have to talk to my programmer about that. Because you figure it's working on face value, but I don't like its implementation. That's my fault. I wouldn't give enough detail. But that's the basis of the ping system. It's not pretty, but it works in terms of how we intended. Where the idea is that like it allows you to like mark locations for allies, and we're gonna obviously go another layer where it's gonna be like you would be able to choose different colors, like green, yellow, and red is the idea, and they all emulate or mean different things. So excuse me. So we'll be looking at that and setting that up going into the week is getting the final graphics in and getting those situated. So let me see if I can find. Hold on. Where is it? Okay. That's not it. Durvar, fill the air real fast. Talk about ARMA. See if there's any questions about or suggestions for the mini maps. I'm trying to find a video real fast.
Digging. Yeah, Control left click, then draw, Control Shift, draw straight lines. Yeah, that's I'm pretty sure that's how
Okay.
ARMA does them. Yeah. See, I think wood drawing on the map slowly fade away eventually or stay permanent. That's a really good one. That is.
Oh, bloody hell!
Um,
This is my fault.
but I think honestly, personally,
It's my fault.
it's your fault. It's always
Yeah,
your
he
fault.
did what I asked him to do, and I forgot that he did it that fast. Yeah, I told him to make the drawing only happen in the full
Burn
screen
him.
map, and I'm stupid, and he already did it, and I didn't realize he'd already done it. So the problem is that you figure like he did what I asked him to do. The weird part is I can't zoom out more. He needs to make it. I'm gonna have to myself or him. I have to go in there. We're gonna have to change that. But the idea is that you figure like that's interesting. It's not so that's a replication bug where it only updates when you go into that one viewport. But the basis is that I can't draw for shit, so don't judge me. But like you figure,
We must.
so it looks like this one's not able to draw, so that one's bugging.
You are
out.
the.
But the idea is that when this system is done, the idea is that you'll be. Oh no, okay, so it's a focus issue. The idea is you can draw like different things like this, draw letters, and you also be able to type. So we'll be adding in a system where you can type, you can draw. There are preset icons, and we're basically mirroring ARMA. We're using ARMA for inspiration, and then we're deviating and editing as needed for the confines of an RTS game. It's still very raw. Again, a lot of this came in on the 11th hour because it's very technical, very complicated math, and a lot of trial and error just to make sure everything's replicating and working between clients. I think just the drawing itself took a day of Q&A and testing and refinement to make sure that we weren't sending too many calls over the network. So it was like figuring out what's the minimum amount of times that you want to run an update loop. Because like in real life, when you're drawing in Photoshop, you're probably drawing like millions of things, depending on the density of your pixels. 1,000, sorry. So the idea, or even hundreds, so you don't need to send an update for every single time that you're drawing. So you have to figure out the bare minimum that you can draw that visualize a line. It's not too thin, but it also like lets other players see like, okay, like this is what you're drawing, this is what you're trying to make out. So we were just QA testing that and figuring out like what is the bare minimum we need to send over the network that's reasonable that people can like, draw these maps on, and then setting it up as this is the test bed to kind of figure everything out. So now that we've kind of gotten this situated, we can just keep on building on the system going into next week. Because the idea would be is using the next couple of days going into Monday, to essentially iron out the kinks on this, make it to where it zooms out more by default. And then it was like, well, it needs to be bigger and more zoomed out than what it is. Because like zooming all the way in like this doesn't work, and the zoom limit's weird. But so then that way you could draw like, okay, we're gonna go up this street, and then there's a corner here. We're gonna turn right, go this way. There's a pod here, there's a pod here. So the operators are going to basically take the left flank and hit this, while maybe the RTS players are focusing and sweeping right. The operator players are going to sweep left, and then maybe helicopters for support. Something stupid like that is the basic ideas that we're thinking of. So then that way, before you execute, before you do a mission, before you do even a just small little operation, it's like a checklist of like, okay, these colors of these players, these icons of these players, these layers of these players of these groups. So that way, if you're running like a really complicated cross-level push, where you have like 3 teams going at the same time, and maybe some of them are overlapping, some of them are basically in different areas of the map, there's no like congestion on the map. So while it's going to take us a little bit longer to get these systems fleshed out, I think they're going to be well worth the time investment. It's like this is one of those things that I can be like, I am very instrumental in just taking the mini map all the way down the line and not making any concessions in terms of how it's implemented. So then that, because this is the backbone of RTS, this is the backbone of co-op, this is the backbone of our it's the strategic amount of combat you're gonna have in like pandemic. Because like you think about how long these games are gonna last. When we implement the new doctrines tree that we're gonna be starting in stage 2 is gonna take you a minimum of a couple hours to do. Like the last one was like for like 10, 20 minutes if you were really good at the game. And the new one's going to be like 3 times the amount of items. I mean, you guys can see it on the end of the year report on 2024. So it's one of those things where like that's the next line item. After we get the mini map done, so I'm gonna break into this real fast before we can get into the Q&A soonish, is that we need to get the mini map to the point where we're happy with it. So ideally, that's going to be going into next Saturday. Ideally, around Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll get to the point where we're happy with the mini map, and then we can just shift off at that point and go and do the ability system. Because on our mind, before we're allowed to give it to you guys, we need to have our build. We need to play test it. You saw it yourself. Is that we got to play it out and fix those bugs or crashes that you saw. Some of them we'll run into in the confines of development. Some of them are only going to be present when we play a full build. Some of them are only going to be present when you guys play it, because everyone plays the game differently. People do different combinations they didn't expect. You guys know how it works. Duravar likes to break a game, so he'll probably play the game in a way where we thought it was bugless, and he goes and breaks it 5 minutes later, and we're like, fuck. So
I will break the game as I break.
But yeah, so it's one of those things where that's the general flow we're going in. We're getting close. I mean, you guys can see it. We can see it. It's just about getting over this last hurdle of the minimap, the ability system. It's weird. It's really the minimap and the ability system that's holding us back. Let me see if I can bring up my docket here. It's the minimap, the ping system, drawing on tactical maps, layers on tactical maps. The weather system is not going to be something that holds it back. So if it comes down to the weather systems, the only thing missing, we're going to go at it for the first playtest. Then it's spawning and possession of operators. We need to do some last minute bug fixes. That's like a day of work of going, like after the mission critical things are done, like the ping system, like the minimap, like the ability system, i.e. the grenades, fire in the air, headshot, those things. And the most of the time going into the ability system is not the abilities themselves, but replicating the old legacy ability system from legacy Cepheus and upgrading it and augmenting it to work within the confines of replication. And then once that's working, then we have to port over our old abilities, because those were done beautifully. Like one of the last things that I can say that we could pull over seamlessly from legacy Cepheus is the abilities that we ported over on experimental, because those were using our new ability system, and those were very modular, very robust, and very clean. So, it's one of those things where essentially, like, that's the kind of agenda. So ideally, I'm going to be working on like the operator and the spawning and possessing, and then doing the main menu and getting the windows set up going into next week. And then Derek will be focusing on the minimap, the ping system, and getting the ability system. And then we'll both, towards the end of the week, if everything goes to plan, we'll come together around Wednesday, Thursday, and then we have to bring over and port over all the assault weapons, all the engineer weapons. And because the idea is that we don't want to have a build unless it's like the bare minimum of like what you guys had for the old units. So that's like the scale up that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, where the idea is that we're getting everything in from the first stage, the first phase, and then we're going to just like do like a day or maybe a couple hours of like an observation, like a general critique, where we're like, okay, is there anything we can change? Is there anything we can improve? Are there any weird naming conventions? Anything that we missed? No? Good. I get the approval. Derek does the approval. We move on to scale up, which is basically what I was talking about before, where we like whatever abilities we didn't prototype in the first pass of doing the ability system replication, then we do those. We bring over all the ground classes that we're missing. So we add the medic, we add the sniper, we add the radio man. Obviously, the radio man is just going to be a glorified assault for the first couple of builds, because airstrikes aren't in the game yet, but airstrikes are coming in phase 2 when we do the doctrines. So again, it's going to be like a rapid mobilization going into this week, where it's like once those major line items are done, then we can do the scale up. We can bring over all the weapons, bring over all the classes that aren't vehicles, and then we cook a build. We play test it ourselves for a couple of days. We stream it. We showcase it. We're transparent about it. And then the moment we have something that we're confident with, but it's not going to break, and you guys aren't going to get frustrated, and it's not annoying, about maybe 3 to 4 days, maybe a week at most, depending on like, it'll be our first co-op test. We'll have to see if we have to recode or change some things. Then we push it out to y'all. And then that would be the conclusion of phase 1. Where it's basically like, okay, at the end of phase 1, you guys have a build that's going to be a beta opt-in on experimental, and you can go and you can play via port forwarding or manual IP connecting, playing with each other. If we can get the Epic Unreal backend working, it's even better. But it'll just come down to timing constraints, because I want to dedicate a couple of days to figure out if we can set up Epic's Unreal presence, like what Space Marine does. So then that way you can play games without port forwarding. But that'll just kind of come down to like time constraints and how everything works. So that's going to be new tech we have to learn. I talked about this previously. Theoretically, I think, do a lot of people here still know how to port forward? or is Portfolio a lost art? Is it?
I know
Okay.
how to port.
I feel like Rust and a bunch of other
That's
games
just
like The
had to do it a
Forest
lot.
and all that, they use Steamworks to basically bypass that, because Steamworks has a relay service where it basically it's able to bridge connections. But because the game is on Steam and on Epic, we're required to use legally the Epic backend because they have to be cross compatible. So we have to figure out the Unreal Epic backend and then basically implement that on the Steam version and the Epic version, so that way they can talk to each other. And then that way they can play, because nobody wants to buy a game on Steam and then they can't play with their friends on Epic, and then they can't play with their friends on Microsoft. That's the biggest fuck you since the beginning of game design, where studios do that. So it's one of those things where like I don't want to be that way anyway. So we are kind of forced to figure out that ecosystem of having a neutral relay service. So yeah, it's one of those things where like that's the kind of the trajectory and the goal, like the mission that we're moving towards right now. So that way we can get this to you guys. And it's just maybe, I mean, worst case it's another 2 weeks. Best case scenario, it's sometime around next Saturday with a little bit of change. It's just gonna kind of, it's fluid. Like the patrol move and the attack move took me double the amount of time I thought it was going to take because the amount of bugs I ran into, and then augmenting and updating the formation system to support it. So it's like you go into something thinking it's going to be a day, 3 or 4 hours, maybe 5 at most. Ends up being 1 or 2 days because of the bugs, other systems break, other things that get changed. You know how it works, or someone changes something else. So it's one of those things where we're keeping it very fluid. We're keeping it transparent. This is our rough schedule. Shit can change. We're going to let you guys know on a weekly basis. So, I mean, and you guys are going to see it. So, from there, let me look at my notes. What else do we have on the agenda, Durvar?
We did have talking to Chris.
Yeah, he got
He
kidnapped
is
by his
not
wife.
here.
We'll have him next week. I'll kidnap him back.
Yes.
Yep.
Kidnapped by his wife. And then we'll
Yep.
kidnap him back.
Kidnapped
Oh
Nepio.
my god.
Okay, so then you go.
Other than that, I think that's it. I believe.
Okay, so then you figure at
Alright.
that point, it's just a matter of just opening it up for discussion. We need to talk a little bit more about the mini map, see what people think, see if they have any suggestions or improvements. I can open up ARMA, and I can stream that worst case if people want some perspective of what I'm talking about. Because I'm pretty sure not everyone even knows here what ARMA is, probably. Don't know. Some
ARMA's
people, you'd be
pretty big,
surprised. Some
but
people I know that
I
are casuals
hardly
don't even know ARMA exists. Most depressing thing in my life. Yeah.
Really?
While people are thinking about that, I will show some of what Michael's been doing. Michael's been going through, like I mentioned previously, and making different versions of different weapons for operator variants that have modular platforms where you can essentially you can customize the weapons. So he's been going through and making different versions of the P90, the SCAR, the M4, and making the housing and the framework for it. So then that way you're able to like add different scopes, different magazine types, different grips, and then that way he can use the stat system we have programmed into the game to make it to where like, actually customizing your operators' weapons, leveling up their weapons in the confines of gameplay, whether it be the RTS aspect or the TPS aspect, has an actual reason in gameplay, has a meaning for it. Where it's like you can get a larger magazine, you can get better target acquisition, you can get higher critical hit chance, higher damage, magazine size, reload speed. Yeah, those are the basic ones. So that's the general gist that Michael's been going down. And then also using it as an excuse to clean house and just like, optimize and just kind of make the guns look a little more like modern per se. Like say like this gun. Why does it hate me so much? Whenever I don't know what Discord changed, or they changed something where like some of the images save as web WPs now.
Everything saving
damn
is
it.
WebMPs now. I don't know why all the images
That's
are saving
bloody
as
annoying. I don't know
WebMPs.
why they do that. It's stupid. I'm gonna have to like figure.
Like if it's starting to feel like MP3 is starting to become a
Web WP.
MP3. MP4. No,
I don't know. I think you're breaking down. Error
PNG.
404. Error 404. All right, so
Yeah, I'm
questions. So let's
breaking.
open up the floor for questions and let's get a general gist of what people think about the progress. So what do you guys think? Questions, concerns? How do you guys think about the progress? What do you guys have any questions about any of the stuff that we show, whether it be the patrol, the attack move, the formation system, the minimap? Minimap's the big one in terms of basically just making sure that it's firing on all cylinders. Let me open up the chat and let me see what you guys have to say, and then I'm going to put the podcast into Q&A section, and we'll just go from there. So again, you guys can raise your hand on Discord if you want to talk on voice, or you can write your question on Discord on the text or the podcast text channel, or you can write your question on Steam or YouTube, and we'll be picking from them and answering questions for the next like 20 minutes or so. Again, this
So dumb brick
Okay.
has a good one. What anti-cheat?
Probably easy anti-cheat. Because it's a neutral one that works on every platform. We can't use Valve's because you figure it's proprietary to their platform. So we'd have to use EAS. I don't know yet. It's one of those things where we're gonna have to look into that when we cross that bridge. That's like at my point, I'm just focusing on the co-op, getting the implementation, getting the first build in, getting it out to you guys, and then I'll deal with the cheaters and the anti-cheat and roll with the punchers because I already know there's gonna be people that like join people's lobbies and break everything, and that's gonna be wasted development time. Fuck my life. Because people just like to dick people over. So
I mean, I'll
yeah, I
break
know, but there's always
everything, but I
that one
won't
guy.
cheat.
Like it's the reason why people buy fucking cheats for CS:GO and Call of Duty. There's always that one person that has to ruin everyone else's experience because it's funny. So that wastes developer resources, but it is what it is. That's something we're gonna have to deal with when we get to that bridge. And I know of EAS, which is the only one that I'm really aware of that's on every platform, but we'll have to wait and see. Right. So what other questions do we have?
So we also had the experimentation. Okay, that's a bug. Bug reports.
Yeah, don't worry
updating
about bugs right now
moments.
because the current rebuild is going to invalidate all bugs. So you figure don't even worry about reporting them. Don't even worry about talking about them. If they're funny, fine, post them. But you're wasting your time because you figure the rebuild that we're doing right now is a complete rebuild of the entire code base from the ground up. I mean, I guess there's always the potentiality of like another bug coming up again, but I don't think so. I mean, that'd be crazy if another bug exactly happens, considering it's a complete rewrite of the game. Let's see what we have here for questions.
I love this one. If you manage to replicate the ARMA map, that would be
no,
bonkers.
that's a no. I figure the biggest thing for us is, I mean, I think he's talking about the ARMA map in essence of like the physical map, or he's talking about the functionality of it.
I'm not sure if they're talking about the functionality or physical map. Pretty sure I saw a question.
So I'll take Scully's question. Scully's question is, how long are we looking at for the rebuild to be released to play? So, and we were talking about the rebuild. How are we framing it? Are we talking about everything being done? Or are we talking about the first phase, the second phase, the third phase? Just a playable version. So you're talking about not a feature complete version, but something you can at least play and see how it is, basically, right? But ideally, I mentioned it briefly earlier. Ideally, 1 or 2 more weeks, because we need to finish the mini map that I showed, the other elements, which you can rewind in the video and go back to those on YouTube, so I don't like repeat myself again. But that's the general idea. Is we're trying to wrap up phase 1 in the next 1 to 2 weeks, and then get you guys a build that you can play. And worst case, it'd be port forwarding. If for the time constraint aspect of it, so we could start phase 2. Because phase 2 is then airstrikes, call in, same thing. It's the airstrikes, it's the upgrade system, and then it's the new abilities and new structures. So you figure like, yeah, there's a lot there. We have to unpack and get situated. I'm pretty sure it's gonna go a lot faster because the foundation has already been established with like the structures and the turrets and like the upgrade system. So like what should take the longest is actually just the UI and getting the actual doctrine upgrade system implemented. No, that's still a thing. The aircraft carrier LHA-6 is still the pivotal main aspect of gameplay. That will not come into until Phase 3. Is that Phase 1 and Phase 2 are going to be playtesting the game on a mini co-op horde map to stress test the game, test the units, test the functionality of gameplay. And then Phase 3 will implement a mini pandemic map. That'll be like, I don't know, 5x5 city blocks for people to play co-op in, and for us to implement the mechanics that are unique to pandemic mode, i.e. civilians, dynamic civilian groups, the contagion infection system, lieutenants, Chelsea, non-infected start, custom game mutilators and settings, music, custom music, radio music. So that's the idea for Phase 3, where it's broken up into layers so it's manageable and it's easy to track. Yeah.
Speaking of aircraft, right? Do you remember a suggestion I made probably nearly a year ago now of direct control aircraft?
That simulation of physics is not easy to do. It's one of those things where like that thing is literally on rails, because we'd have to determine the Unreal Engine on paper does support water and boat simulation. There is a buoyancy actor component, but that's a whole other ball game. It's like the same thing of like making it to where the operators can drive vehicles. That's going to be like at the end of the doctrine stuff. And it's going to be like the priority is going to be the RTS aspect of the vehicles. And then we're going to dive into it and see just if we can make the operators drive the vehicles right off the bat, or for the sake of timeline, maybe push that off until the base co-op is out and then put it in so operators can drive vehicles. And at the same time, it kind of comes down to the community of like, how important is this to you guys? It's important to me, but at this point, we need to get something out you can play and then build on it and make sure that whatever we do get out is a good foundation and it's playable. What are you going to say? Because the Legacy right now doesn't have that ability. Oh, yeah.
Something I do remember a while ago was when you did give the operator a chance to to control a vehicle. It was the
you're playing Grand Theft Auto basically. You just run people over the whole time, and you were like using usual. You can use the manual turret to shoot. So there was a key where you could let the AI shoot for you, and then if you hit numpad 0, it switches over to manual targeting, and then it switches in the battlefield. Where you could actually move the mouse, and then you could fire the primary cannon, and you could fire the machine gun. The idea is that like again, I don't want to just like make it to where it's like you're just driving a vehicle and going slightly faster. I want to mirror games like Call of Duty or Battlefield when you're in the vehicles. So then that way there's an actual purpose for doing it. And obviously an operator will always be highly more efficient than an RTS AI, because they're going to understand AoE and stacking and where to put a shell to maximize kills. So it's one of those things where like there's never going to be a compare. They're not going to be comparable. So that's one of the yeah.
What I remember is a video I sent you on that little Gazo thing that you get me to use, and I don't know if I've still got it, but it's of me when I was in that car thing, and I was getting the because you didn't disable the jump button for the operator.
Where's my sake? I need sake. I remember that, and I was so fucking mad because I was like, I put all my time and attention to detail into making it to where you can get into the vehicle and drive it, and I was so happy because I copied GTA of like you had different cameras, so you could drive in first person, and then you could drive in third person, and then I got the control modes where you press numlock and an AI would shoot the guns, and you could focus on driving, and then you could get it to where if you hit numlock again, you take manual control, and it mirrored Battlefield, and then this asshole comes and he's like, "Oh, it can jump," and I'm like, "Fuck! Why did I think of that?" It was just one of those things where I was just kind of like, "Oh, I forgot to disable the character," because the old vehicles were basically characters, so they had the movement component that allowed them to jump. And we didn't go to the move. Well, I didn't go to the movement component and disable their ability to jump. So they were basically able to jump in place, and it was the weirdest thing ever. But the newer vehicles are using chaos vehicles. So then that way, it's like it's actually physically simulated, basically doing the same thing that Fortnite does. So that's going to be interesting to basically see how that translates over for like actually being able to drive the vehicles and how that operates and works when we get to that point. Because yeah,
And I remember, then I figured out how to basically one-hit kill
Chelsea,
what do we call that
Greg.
Python again? No. Greg. I remembered how to insta-kill Greg with the car by
What
just
would you do? Push
driving
him off the
into it.
map?
Yeah, just pushed him off the map into the water and dead.
Oh, because you probably malfunctioned him into a kill Z volume. Because we have kill Z volumes that are lining some of the water. So when units fall into the water, they die. And Chelsea's the only one that can teleport. So literally it does a check that if you're not Chelsea, you're dead. But if you are Chelsea, then find the nearest beach and teleport her there. Because there was a guy in general chat today that was reporting it. Where he was like, aha, I found a bug. Chelsea is now gone. And I was like, you kind of screwed yourself, because if you crashed her into the ocean next to one of your bases and you secluded her off on one island, there's a probability, there's a chance that she could teleport or lerp to your island, and now like she's unkillable, so you're kind of fucked. So it's like, it's just one of those things where it's just like, oh, yeah. And that's another thing, is when we get to the lieutenants, is spending a little bit more time on the pandemic on phase 3, is I want the focus on Chelsea and her lieutenants, and me and Derek are going to break off with Michael and do different animations, different suites of attacks to make them a little bit more fair, but also deadly, where it's like playing like Monster Hunter, other games like that. They need to be, what's the word I'm thinking of? But you need to be able to tell their choreography, like basically, like you need to be able to like see their tells and know what they're about to do, how they're going to attack, and be able to plan for it, instead of just being a generic melee swap. And she just like swiper no swipes all your units in one go and everyone's dead. That's the most annoying shit ever. So it's like they need to be more nuanced lieutenants, and we know that's a thing. And it's like what I mentioned in the past, is that doing the doctrines now is not doctrines and legacy. It's the doctrines that like on the roadmap that is like what we want to do to be done with the game and finite. And it's the same thing for the AI. It's the same thing for the lieutenants and Chelsea and all of them. Is that doing them with pandemic mode and doing it in phase 3 or stage 3 is that version of it, not the old one. Because it's very important to us to basically spend the time iron out those kinks, basically. What other questions do we have?
So
Okay.
Dumbrick had a question. Let me just. Oh no, Discord don't break on me. While we're still on maps, I saw someone, don't remember the name, a while ago, who suggested that you should be able to make the map take up one of your monitors.
Supreme Commander
who use dual monitors. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Supreme Commander style map.
I used to do that when we used to play that. Remember we used to play that on co-op? We would do comm stomps.
Yeah,
that was a good game. Forge Alliance, I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah, no, not Forge Alliance.
Right. Yeah, because that's one of the things that me and Derek have talked about it, but we just never had the time to actually sit there and dedicate to it. We would have to research how viewports are created in the editor, and then create a new viewport. Technically, it's possible. It's like some kind of workaround split screen mode. Because theoretically, what you do is you just have it to where it opens up in a window, and then you can drag that wherever you want, and you set the size of your window, and then you just render the minimap to it. I'm gonna say right now that's like wish list, leave early access, icing on the cake kind of stuff. Like it's really cool. It's one of the things that I've thought about. I've talked about people on the team, but it's just not something in the cards for right now. But I love the idea of it because I play other games that have it, and I'm just like, wow, I wish other games had this, because like when you have a big monitor or like a TV as a second one, it's fucking invaluable. It's so amazing because if you have it on a huge screen or even a projector, and you look over and you're like, oh my god, like I can see like the littlest unit that's sticking up on your base or whatever, instead of like having to zoom in and use a magnifying glass, because the map is so large that I was telling Derek about this the other day, is that we have to be very careful about the icon sizes and how we overlap stuff, because the old legacy version, it was just a mess. Like you couldn't tell what was going on because everything had a unique icon. And it was just one of those things where it was like, we need to just do normal color blobs, like in StarCraft, and do Z orders based off of priority. And then maybe Chelsea or lieutenants or like special infected can have icons. But a vast majority of them need to just be color shapes. You know, like a box for structures, a circle for
Probably
for
working
normal
on-
people, that kind of stuff. To make it quick and easy to read, besides just having to figure out, like, is that an icon? What is that? You know what I mean? And I felt like that was an issue in Legacy that we're seeking to fix with the minimap this time around. And what were you gonna say, Derivar?
Two games I think really
Yeah.
were in a league of their own.
Yeah.
Is StarCraft and StarCraft 2
You don't like Company of Heroes?
Generals. Well, Command and Conquer as a whole, I really feel like those games were in a league of their own. You know, because of StarCraft's uniqueness in the way they did their sort of the maps, the icons, the way they did everything. You know, and with Command and Conquer Generals, it's just like, well, I keep saying Generals because that was my game that I grew up with. You know, everything was like StarCraft. It was unique. It was, you know, every individual thing had different things, and
I
that's
started on
what I see
StarCraft
you
1,
guys doing with Cepheus.
and then from there it was Company Heroes 1, and then it was Dawn of War, and then Soulstorm, and Winter Assault. So it was like I got into Company Heroes before the other one. So like Company Heroes for me is like that special place where it's like a transitional thing. And then with Company Heroes, I got burnt out from playing like 200 plus hours of Company Heroes. I fell back on Dawn of War, which is why I made you play that game. And then you were like, "What the fuck is this? This is better than Dawn of War 3." You know?
Now, I had only experienced Dawn of War 3, and then when you
Soulstorm.
introduced me to Soulstorm, I was just like,
yeah, there's no
now.
take back season. That's one of the things for me is those games are very pivotal in like
Like
informing the idea. And then the same thing, I went back and I played Warcraft 3 recently, and I realized we're doing our rally points wrong. Is that I didn't realize this in the old Legacy games. I don't think StarCraft does it, but you could rally point on units. And I feel like that's like a lost form. I don't know if you can still do that in most modern RTS games. I never thought about doing it. Yeah?
I know StarCraft 2's.
I never thought about doing it, so I felt so stupid when I played Warcraft and I was playing with my friend at a LAN party a couple months ago. And he was like, "What are you doing? Like, assign your barracks is like your humans to when they get built, or your heroes to just go to your guy, your hero." And I was like, "What?" I never played it that way. I never played RTS games where you would do that. I would always have like a general garrison point, rally point, and then they'd be hotkeyed. When they came out, I would always course correct them and macromanage them. So it was one of those things where like I just never needed it because I always wanted to be in control anyway. So the moment they got built, audio cue, pop over there, tell them exactly where they go. Because I was so pinpoint, like I want my machine gun here, I want my snipers here, I want my riflemen here, I want my jeep going here. That those rally points never really worked for me besides just send them in a general vector. I look at the minimap and I'm going to course correct them about probably 25 to 50% through their move order and give them their final order. Because you know how it is in Company of Heroes when we would play it is that it changes by like every 5 to 10 seconds. So when you order someone and when they necessarily arrive, and you included travel time, it's not going to be the same battle. You might have retreated. You might have routed them. You know, like, or you might have like be in a stagnating kind of like a what am I thinking of? Like basically like no, God, what am I thinking of right now? Where it's like no, not either party is not making any progress. Sure, that where basically the idea is that you figure like, and that's the way I always played RTS games. And that's something I need to look into this time around. Is stalemate. Sorry, I'm retarded. Is that like that's something I want to put on the auxiliary list? Maybe I'll sneak it in next week. If I don't know how people actually use it. I mean, do you guys use that? When you guys used to play the old legacy RTS games, would you set your rally points to like a moving unit, or would you set your rally points to like a static point? Like how many people actually play that way? So Dumb Brick, you would set it to a physical unit. Hero, clear cops, static point, general area, static point. There's a lot more dynamics than I thought there were going to be. Like I thought it was going to be a lost form.
Yeah, I don't really. I don't have a leg in the race because I.
Well, I'm talking
never
about
played
just general
Warcraft.
RTS games. I didn't realize this until playing Warcraft 3 that it was a norm back in the day where you could set like a rally point to a unit. And I felt stupid for not noticing it because I was like, and then I went back and I played some more modern RTSs and they were doing it. I don't know. I just never thought about it. Where it was like you click on a barracks, then you click on like a unit, and it's gonna set it. It's gonna attach that point to them, and then that's theoretically it's very simple to do because all you do is you have it to where you attach the flag on top of their head, and then you only show it when you select the building. And then when the building queries the location, you don't get the flag's location, you get the unit's location. So then that way it's a redirect. But you attach the flag to the actor, but the actor is owned by the barracks, so that way the synergy is there, so that it just works. And theoretically, that was something that I was just thinking about now, going into like this week for the podcast. So, do you guys think that it would? Do you guys see a benefit from that? Is it something you guys want me to do going into Monday? Is see if I can put that in there for you guys, so I can show it off next Saturday. So, because it would be any unit, like a structure, sorry, not a structure, like like a assault, winters, heavy vehicles, whatever. Yeah. Okay. So let me write that down on my whiteboard. It's something to look into going into Monday because there's enough people saying they want it. I thought it was a lost form or art form, and it's clearly not. Just because I don't use it doesn't mean that it's no value in putting it in, because obviously everyone plays RTS games differently. So, that'd be Garrison. No, rally point. Retarded. Rally point attachable to units. Now, because there's no garrison system, it's not going to do the garrison like I saw someone ask that in the channel. So that's going to be something, a layer that we'd put on towards the end of Doctrines when we put in the first vehicles. When we get the replication up, then that would be, we'd make it to where they would know when on move completed, enter said vehicle. And then that way you're good to go. It's a hook. So what you're saying is ABC. Like it's very simple to do. It's just building the foundation for it with the infantry. And then every unit is a pawn. So the idea is that as long as I just talk to it as if it's a pawn, because everything that can move in gameplay is a pawn, I can just be like, hey, if you right click for this proximity, like pinpoint on a pawn, a vehicle, a person, a helicopter, then I want you to attach to said object and move with it. And then if it's wrong, you accidentally attack on right click on a unit, you do it again, and it would just go on the ground. So that's the general idea or concept I'm thinking of. And I'm thinking of it right now. It should be a quick, like 20-minute thing, worst case, with some bug testing. So that should be pretty easy to do now that I think about it, because all I'm doing is sending a vector anyway. So yeah, and then the mesh itself is just a visualization of that vector representing the local space, the local client. Okay, groovy. So then we got some progress there. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about for anything you feel would add more nuance to systems that I showed, whether it be the attack move, the patrol move, I don't know. Things that we've showed that you feel a slight edit or tweak here and there would flesh it out more. And even if I can't do it now, I'll at least notate it for the future. And if enough people say the same thing, then obviously it's like a civilian evacuation. It gets more attention. So let me see what we got here. Okay, so that guy is basically saying he loves the idea. Get nice quality of life. Okay, cool. I think someone tagged me and asked a question and we completely breezed over it because that question was longer. Oh, Krieg Corps TTTV. Assuming after the rework, will there be more open suggestions towards structures and functional decoration items for buildings? Will there be potential in the future for zoning, like a contained space that is gated or blocked off or be set at specific places to be more immersive and fluidly push civilians that are being evac through checkpoints and bases? In a similar fashion, where can we put parameters for evacuation orders and intake that we can do for our own bases? So what you're talking about is having a sub-zoning system. but having the subzoning system be dynamic to an area or region you paint or draw within that zone. Is what you're saying, Krieg, for the second part. And the first part is just adding decorations and ideas like what Terminal's master thread is. So I understand your question before I go into it. Okay, so when it comes to the decorations, when it comes to those kind of designs, that is something that I'm saving for after the rework. Absolutely, we're gonna look into it. And like I've told Terminal in the past, one of the biggest things that's holding me back, and we talked about this, I think 2 podcasts back, is I don't want to put I want to try and take some of the decoration items that you guys have designed, or put inside the master thread on Discord, and give them purpose, like the radio tower and stuff like that. In some cases, fine, there'll be decorations, we throw them in there. But I'm kind of waiting until we have the first playtests, we get some of the doctrine stuff in, and then around there, we're going to be adding a lot more structures in the game. We're going to have more robust combat, so I can start to prototype and make sure that the combat AI are working. Because the idea in Legacy right now is that if you build enough miscellaneous clutter, you break their AI. Like, they don't know what to do anymore because the map gets so congested and so busy. And it happens in every RTS game. You ever notice that if you build a crazy amount of walls in Age of Empires, they literally break down. They don't know what to do. Especially in the newer Age of Empire 4 and 3, they'll go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because their threat analysis system cannot figure out where they should go, how they should do it, and X, Y, and Z. And it's because, again, it's a bitch to have dynamic objects and have a crazy there's no fixed count amount you can do. So it's just a technical hurdle that we need to get over before I'm comfortable adding more than what we have already. So and that's on it's not technically, it's somewhere around phase 1 going into phase 2. It's an unwritten thing, and it comes up, but I know it's a thing that you guys want us to do. Now, when it comes to the second question about a subzoning system or some kind of way of being able to break down an area. Let me think about that one. I don't have an answer on that one yet because that one's nuanced. There's a lot of layers to that because as it stands right now, and this is the criticism that we've gotten in previous podcasts about a year ago, I think at this point, where people were mad, rightly so, that the infection pods and the gas towers killed everyone, even if it wasn't inside their radius of what they were infecting. So if there was a gas tower or an infection pod just touching with this one corner of the city block, it killed everyone in the entire zone equally. So the placement of the pods didn't matter. So one of the things that I seek to rectify in stage 3 or phase 3 is to make it to where the location of gas towers and pods actually matter. And that would theoretically be a feedback loop into what you're talking about, where you stage your defenses, where you build your defenses is more important than ever before. Because you figure if you can close off and cordon off in advance and have a small little pocket of infection that's still alive in a zone, it's not going to be a game over for that zone. It's only going to infect and kill what's inside the area of influence for the structures that the infected create, and it allows you to give you some time. And that could play nicely with a system like what you're talking about, where you could cordon off and say, hey, this is Riley's field, but you've lost 1/4 of Riley's field. So this area is now designated as everyone needs to evacuate, but not everyone in the entire zone needs to evacuate. So it's one of those things where I get where you're coming from. That's a nice quality of life feature to have, but I think that's going to be on the wish list for the time being. I do like it though. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. There's some potential there. I mean, Derivar, what do you think about it?
I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Does it fall in line with your war crimes of killing civilians, you dick?
Well, no, not really. Nothing falls in line with my war crimes of killing civilians, but
Oh Lord. But yeah, I know. So it feels.
You accepted, mother.
No, I dig it. Okay, so what do we got here? YouTube. And Discord. What we got here? Someone asked about land, didn't they?
So for Discord, yeah.
I think the only reason why
Riftfall.
game developers don't
will
do
we have
land anymore is because of fucking piracy. That's the only reason why they go over online now.
land-
Is they require a handshake, so that way it makes it harder for pirates to play the game. Let me look into that, because you figure I don't know what the norm is now. I don't know. Like, I don't. Should be fine. I don't know. I gotta look into that. I haven't even thought about that. I know that. What do other games typically do for indie for multiplayer? Durvar, you play a shit ton of them. Is it common for land?
No, it's all.
Do they do that just because they don't
online.
want to make it easy for pirators?
Yeah.
What about that one
they do
game,
that because they don't wanna
the
make it
drug
any-
making game?
That's all.
So there's no land
That's
feature.
all online too.
Oh wow.
No.
Okay.
Schedule
Okay.
1 is all.
Let me do
online.
some research on that, because I understand it. It lowers the entry fee of, like, if someone hacks your game or put, like, like one of these, like, hacking people make a copy that strips out the DRM for Steam, because Steam has DRM. It's just non-invasive. All it literally does is just do when you open a game on Steam, it basically just check, does this user own said game? Allow a user to open said game. So that way you can't copy a game on Steam for another thing. Now, some game developers choose not to wrap it, but their DRM is so cheap that it doesn't really matter. Like Fallout 3 doesn't wrap their EXE with DRM. So you could copy Fallout 3 to another computer and it would just run. Unless they changed it recently. I don't know. That was like 6 years ago I tried it. But it's one of those things where I need to think about that. I can't give you an answer right now. I need to do the research and talk to a couple people and see what the numbers say. But I kind of miss those times too, where you can go to a LAN party and do that. Yeah, let me think about that one. Let's see, what else do we have for questions?
There we've got. Let me scroll down again.
Yeah.
Earth Alchemist. Will other factions be able to use shredder
No,
rounds?
shredder rounds are exclusive to Cirque. They are your tech tree, they're your research. Everyone else is fucked. Ultimately, they're just there to simulate and give the idea of, like, warring bands staying, like, barely hanging on. And while the idea is that some of them will get rolled by Chelsea, some of them won't get rolled by Chelsea. They'll be able to hold out, and it'll just be a stalemate, is the idea. But you're the main player, you're the protagonist. Everyone else there is along for the show. So, and the only exception to that would be Fenrir in the long term, but they're a dynasty away at this point. Like, you figure I'm more focused on here and now for Cirque being infected, and the civilians and dynamic civilian groups, and Pierce and Natalie going into 1.4. Even for Pierce and Natalie, they'll be able to fight them, they'll be able to damage them, they'll be able to get them to retreat, but they can't kill them. That's your job as Cirque, to put the bullet in them and to finish the job. What else do we have?
So we got. Well, Dunbrook's got 2 questions. So, question 1: if you have a private game in co-op with friends, could we have an option to turn off the anti-cheats?
I don't know. I haven't played with EAS, so I don't know how it works. I don't want to answer that question without knowing how the back end works. I just know of it. I know that that's the thing we have to look into. When we get closer to actually implementing a system like that, then you can ask that question. For right now, I'll know when I actually get the time to actually implement it. And the second question was, if you did rally points for units, would you have it so the rally point became static when the unit dies? I mean, yeah, you'd have to do that. It would have to be that whenever they die, it drops the point at that location, and then it's up to the player to do it again. That's why I think some people were saying they do it to vehicles, or they do it to hero units, because they have the highest potential of survivability in these games. So it kind of comes down to how well you plan out your strategy of, like, don't put it into the riot shield guy in the front of your base. Put it in, like, maybe the sniper or, like, the Humvee that's just kind of loitering behind, and it gets them to the general hemisphere, and then it's up to you to course correct. What else do we have for questions, Durvar?
So we've got, will there be mods in Steam to add to the game that people will?
When it comes down
have
to
developed?
modding, that's going to be something that we're going to be looking into for 1.4 or 1.5. I don't have anything besides just the current planning for modding that I'm thinking of right now is having it to where you can have custom settings that you can share with your friends to be able to mutilate and change the settings of like the custom settings, and then the music mods for the radio. Those are the two types of mods that are planned right now. Long term, it's going to be maps and model swaps, but that's something that's like in the future after everything's said and done, and either for 1.0 or shortly after 1.0, because that's something that's like nice to have but not mission critical, but we know we want to put it in our ecosystem of having post-launch support. Because I mean, how many people here have bought fucking DayZ ARMA for DayZ? How many people, bought games like XCOM for the co-op mod or stuff like that, or the Skyrim mod? There's a lot of value in terms of basically like things that the developers didn't intend that are great. So it's one of those things where it's like I fully embrace modding. Most of the people on the team come from a modding background, but it's not a switch. It takes preparation from the SDK. It takes maintenance on the SDK just for the modding, and then every patch or whatnot can break the modding. So it's like there's an intentionality, there's a commitment. And once you release a modding SDK, you have to maintain and update it. I think Durvar has a good example of what happens when that doesn't happen. You know what I'm talking about, Durvar? That game you were telling me about?
Huh?
We were trying to learn how to mod it, and then you found out it was discontinued because they released the modding tools in the beginning of the game releasing, and then they didn't have the resources to develop the game and do the modding. And it was like, what?
Oh, that
yeah,
drove
because he
me
was trying to
insane,
figure out how to
dude.
mod the game because they released the modding tools. It was on Steam as an early access title. They're adding co-op and a bunch of other stuff going into this year actually. And it was one of the things where they added modding from 1.0, and then they realized it was just too much to maintain and do. For a AAA team with like 100 people, fine, put fucking the interns on it. But for people like 5 or 6 people, and then you take into consideration the scale of the project, it's not tenable. It's not possible based off of like, you're not maintaining the game, you're maintaining the bugs, new content and features, the SDK. It's multiplicative where it's like, yeah. So it's one of those things where like, I just want to make sure I'm giving you an in-depth answer so you understand my perspective and where I'm coming from. But it is something that we want to do long term. It's just finding the time to do it when everything calms down. The co-op is out. Maybe around campaign, maybe after the campaign. What are you gonna say? Yeah. Anyway, what we got for questions? What else did we got? We're getting to a point, 10 minutes for questions, and we're wrapping it up. That comes on the 2-hour mark. So give me some hard ones. Give me some good ones. And then we have to go catch you up on Path of Exile. He just bought the game, so we're going to be playing that tonight. If anyone plays Path of Exile, they're welcome to message me and Durvar. Or if they play Monster Hunter, or if they play Helldivers, we play with people in the community. Like, I'll play with the Patreons, they play with normal people, and I don't give a shit. Like, I play with anyone on Discord. We have a good time. We talk about Cepheus. We talk about other games. We sit on the public Discord. So, what?
We friendly kill Robert.
Fuck you.
We friendly kill Robert.
Yeah, you kill me, and then I kill you, and then we just stare at each other awkwardly while the other 2 guys are looking at us like, why do we play with these retards? like really? Monster Hunter World? No, what's it called? Wild. God, I always fuck up the last one. That game's amazing.
I didn't think it would be as good as it is.
I took your Michael was like downplaying it. He was like, I don't know if it's gonna be good, dog. My friends are saying it's just the same thing it always had been. And I was like, Michael, what are you talking about? Durvar's over here gushing every goddamn beta. And then I went into it and played it fresh. 1.0 launch when it came out. I didn't play any of the betas because I didn't want to ruin my experience and burn out on it. It's fucking amazing. It's phenomenal. Like, I love that game. Like, I need to actually play it some more. I have a hard time focusing on playing games and then doing game design. For people that do creep my Twitch and like my Steam or my Discord, like I barely play games at nighttime. I might probably watch a show once a night, and then I program like 80 or 90% of the day. So it's one of those things where like I need to actually play it again. I think I'm gonna start playing some more games after everything calms down the next couple of weeks. Because you want to play World of Warcraft, and I was even telling you, you got to wait till summer. I'm not playing World of Warcraft with you until summer, just because I don't want to have any distractions besides the only two I already have. What were you gonna say? Yeah, no.
Back into
WoW. Not WoW. I don't know if it wasn't WoW Hardcore. It was vanilla. We were just playing through. We finished BFA and we were starting the Shadowlands. We were starting Shadowlands. Yeah. Anyway, let's see if we have questions. Something on YouTube, Discord.
If anyone,
we wanted to make a guild. We were going to make a guild and play that casually. People on the Discord in between develop it. But like I told them, I don't want. I already have Monster Hunter. I already have Diablo. Not Diablo. Fucking Path of Exile 2. I'm focusing on those two. And then World of Warcraft can be in June, July when I'm patting myself on the back and we have more of the show, and I can just not be a workaholic as much. So, questions. Okay, Herbert asked the question. Ambient infection. Is ambient infection mode planned for players who do not wish for Chelsea to exist? We all know she's supposed to be something akin to Alec Mercer, but he wasn't needed for the infection to keep going. So we might as well have the option about a superhero infected and just slow infection spread. We had a poll about that. I did not forget about that poll. The poll was you're like fucking aggressively in favor of adding an alternate start mode. And the alternate start mode, the idea of it was having it to where the crow movement in the book of chapter 3 trigger off about 12 devices that spread the virus over the map, like biological, like chemical warfare stuff. And the idea is that you could stop some of them, but you can't stop all of them. So like in the first 3 to 5 minutes, it just explodes over the map. And then you get like maybe a couple of locations that, go to infected status. And then from there, it starts the machine. It'll start spreading. And we need enough of them to get it, moving. So the idea is that we need to have probably ideally, you could stop some of them. We were thinking like 6, 12. We might drop that number down to 3 or 4. It comes down to the playtest. This is phase 3, stage 3 that I'm talking about. And we talked about this briefly before where I was breezing over it earlier for the roadmap, is I want to add that in there with doing lieutenants. So we'll do the lieutenants and we'll do Chelsea and them first. But while we're programming them, we'll do that split where basically the start is different, but instead of having like Chelsea or the lieutenants, it's just the special infected and the standard infected, and there's the lieutenants basically, and they start from those biological weapons going off. Is it like think Resident Evil 6 in China? It was China, right? The biological attack from Carla. Yeah, think about that. That's basically the framework or the idea that we have. Is like think about Resident Evil 6 Carla's biological attack in China, where it's like some kind of like chemical that spreads it really quickly in a couple of zones, and then you can stop some of them, you can't stop all of them. So again, that is something that we're thought about. We polled on Discord, people wanted it, and we're doing it. Like that is like a bullet point on phase 3 that is happening. And a huge part of phase 3 is custom game settings. Taking what we have now and doing them on cocaine and building the pandemic mode around that. So we'll take like the blow up guy and the standard infected and the juggernaut and the Leviathan, and we'll have tabs and we'll allow you to configure their speed. We'll allow you to configure their health. We'll allow you to configure when they start spawning, their spawn probability, that kind of stuff. So then that way you could do like mini light modding. And then you can take those and you can save them as presets. So let's say Duravar wants to go make an insanity run. Then he can basically make it to where Juggernauts spawn on day 1. They have double health. They move faster. Maybe they move slower, but he triples the health. Maybe he makes it to where the standard infected can only walk, but they have 5 times the amount of health. So now you're playing vanilla Resident Evil 1. We want to make it to where you can customize the experiences, and then you can share those with your friends. So like, let's say one host is doing like on the workshop or whatever, or if we end up doing mod.io for platform neutrality for Epic and Steam, you could have it to where like if someone makes like a hardcore run or like vanilla Resident Evil mod where it's like all the settings are custom tweaked and adjusted to basically make it to where it tries to emulate Resident Evil. It turns off the special infected, so then that way all you get is standard infected. All they can do is walk. They have 3 to 5 times their health, and then because you don't have to blow up guys and the other guys, you can increase it. You can increase the spawn count of those guys, and then have a vanilla generic. Zombie thing. So those are the things that we're thinking of this time around for custom game settings to give players more control. What else do we have for questions? We have 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm just about to check. Go. All right. So, Maxim asks, when I select a helicopter, I need to press C to order it to land. But if I select 2 or more helicopters, then I have to select X to not to the question. Something's playing in the background. Okay. To order both or all of them to land. My question above seeks to solve over-engineered control panels and mouse.
Is he asking about the sophistication or like the amount of key pressing he has to hit that the order more helicopters to manually land?
I don't know.
Well, while you figure that, ask him for clarification. And then the person that asked in the Discord chat, is it like a story game or is it something I can actually read? So the concept of the story is in novelization on Amazon and Steam. So if you want to know the story, it's in there. When it comes to actually the gameplay campaign, that's coming in 2026 at this point. That's definitely not coming this year. I'm not going to rush the campaign. I want to put all my time and all my energy into the co-op and getting the everything that we're talking about done. And then that's going to round out halfway towards the year to 3/4 of the year. And then at that time, we'll start production of the campaign around Q3 to Q4 of this year. And then at that point, that's going to ride out the rest of the year going into 2026 for us to finish the campaign and do it correctly. Because I estimate at least 6 months to do the campaign minimum and do it correctly. Because we have to buy mocap seats, we have to hire some actors, we got to rehire voice actors because we haven't gotten the new voice done in years. And then we need to do the scripts, update the gameplay scripts, get some of the interiors made, plan out the cutscenes, do the voiceover work, figure out if we're going to act out the cutscenes of mocap suits or if we're going to hire someone to do it, be it like a local agency. So there's a whole logistical line. We're treating the campaign as like, it's not like a 1 to 2 hour thing. Here you go, it's done. Like we're treating it as like Pandemic, where it's a completely different thing. That's more akin to like what's that? Oh god, I always forget. What's the alien game you had me play? Dark Descent. It's more of like what I'm imagining in my mind is Dark Descent for the campaign. So that takes time. That's like 6 months, 8 months to plan out and get it to the point where I'm happy. And it's like 4 to 6 hours kind of deal. So that's the idea.
So
you can buy a paper copy on Amazon. There is a paper book. I have it. I own it. My friends borrow it every once in a while, ironically. I went to like a bar recently and someone was like, what book are you reading? I was like, oh, it's my games book. And they were like, what? And someone else there actually played the game. So.
Caught a fish.
What do you mean?
Big.
I ran into 2 people that have actually played the game on the street. One was a waitress. And then another person that was at a bar. And it was like the funniest thing ever of like interactions. It was just like, it was fun. It was like, they couldn't believe it. They were like, Cepheus protocol. I think I played that game. Oh wait, that was the game I played last week. And I was like, oh shit.
Maxim has clarified.
Okay, what is it?
We have clarification. So the helicopters use different commands to land if there are 2 or more selected by a mouse box. Clarification. So, what specifically are you asking?
Is he asking for a better way of mass ordering helicopters to land?
Yeah, what specifically are you asking? Because That's clarified it a little bit, but
If you just
I
tell me what
still-
you
I'm
want
still
to
confused.
do, then I can tell you if we can do it. Because that's going to be something that we're going to be doing when we get to the vehicles at the end of stage 2. Okay, so I just linked you the paperback for Amazon, so you can buy the physical book of that link that I sent you. And Amazon will print it out and ship it to you. So I put it in the Discord chat because somebody was asking you said they couldn't find it.
Control. Use different controls to command different commands to land. So no, if I've played Cepheus several times in the last week, and I've had multiple helicopters, and they all land.
I
At
guess
the same
get him
speed.
to send me a video on Discord. So record a video of what it is that you're seeing on your phone or whatever it is. DM it to me or tag me in general. Actually, tag me in general chat. Because then that way I don't miss it. Because sometimes I'll notice that people will DM me on Discord, and Discord does that thing where it puts people in a spam folder, and it doesn't actually notify me. And I sometimes feel like an asshole because it'll take me like a week just to reply back to someone. Some 2 weeks. So probably just tag me on general chat and just whatever it is that you're talking about, so we can have a discussion there. Because I have no problem clarifying, or maybe it's a bug. I don't know. Once you show me, I'll know, and we can go from there. Because it could be different types of helicopters, a mismatch. Because the system is only programmed to support like all Little Birds, all Blackhawks. Might be wrong, but I don't think it's cross-compatible with different types. Because it assumes they're going to have a different ability set, is the idea. Like if an assault and a heavy have the same ability, it always picks one or the other because it classifies by class. Could be that. Don't know. One last question, Durvar, then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay, so
That's
someone
the hardest
asked
one?
actually. Okay, don't write in caps, brother. You don't need to write caps to emphasize your meaning. When you show off, so Dumbrick asks, when you show off the emergency lights last podcast in slow mode, and they flash really fast, will there be a photosensitive epilepsy warning?
I mean, we had it in the legacy version. We're going to add it in this one. And it's one of those things where like the visualization of it is still like raw. It's not finalized. So that's going to change between what you saw then and what you see when you actually play it. And then over the course of feedback, it's going to change. Like there's not even an EIS message. We have to get that recorded and approved by Chris. And then we have to budget it in and then basically pay a voice actor. I think Winter said he wanted to try doing it. So if Winter does it, that'll save us some money because he just wanted to do it for fun to help us out. He has some voice acting mods on the Steam Workshop. But it's one of those things where it's going to be like, again, like it's like the prices for the barracks or the gas or like the motor pool or like the generators. Like those numbers are speculative and they're going to change. And when I get to play a build that's full, like Chris has eye problems. Chris is probably one of the people on the team that kind of is a little more temperamental for like the lights and the adjusting and all that. So when the developers start playing it and we get the feedback of a full build and we're like, damn, that's really annoying, we'll tweak it. And then we give it to your guys' hands. It'll be that version, and then you guys will tell us what you think, and then we'll refine it, and then that's when it actually goes out. And regardless, there's going to be an epilepsy warning. And every game under the sun nowadays has an epilepsy warning. Any other questions before we wrap it up?
Is it planned to bring back the police faction?
Natalie is covered in the new book that Chris just finished last week that we talked about. We wouldn't be doing the book and planning for these characters to be instrumental in the story and the campaign if we weren't planning on doing them. And one of the most important things that I wanted to do, just to breeze over this really quickly, is we put them in previously and they were just reskin dynamic civilian groups and they were just theming as like a Halloween party. So it was one of those things where I took them out so we could actually spend the time and the resources of it in the future by like distinguishing them of like, you play like the British, you play like the GLA. And that's something that we want to focus on going into 1.4. Whereas like there's an actual like tactics, there's actual like investigation that you have to play, like, so that's an escalation there is as we keep developing and pushing up the game. That's a major line item in 1.4 with the campaign is making it to where when we do the campaign assets for Pierce and Natalie, it feedbacks into Pandemic as what you're talking about. And then obviously an added bonus of that, depending on if I get my way in stage 3, I might do it then. I might save it for 1.4. Is one thing I want to do. That's been a major criticism that people have talked about, is basically having it to where you can issue orders to dynamic civilian groups and they can give you missions. That might happen in Pandemic for the stage 3. That could be pushed off into 1.4 depending on our timeline and schedule. So I think that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and give the outro. Let me just start that. That's a wrap on this week's Cepheus Protocol HQ. I'm Robert, and thanks for hanging out and exploring the world we're building. Huge thanks to everyone supporting us on Patreon, YouTube, Discord, and beyond. Whether you're backing us, sharing feedback, or just being part of the ride, you make all of this possible. If you want to consider supporting us, check out the many ways of supporting development via Patreon, merch, official novels, and DLC on Steam. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week for another circuit.